I'm going to take you through a short presentation and demonstration to introduce you to the Outsource Accelerator, which is a combination of products and best practices that we've harvested from the field. The accelerator is addressing three main challenges that were highlighted in the report last year into IT outsourcing. The first challenge is to do with poor collaboration between the business and IT and the outsource partners, and how that can be often accentuated by poor contractual mechanisms that are in place, and how it can lead to a big disconnect between the business needs and the software requirements that the outsource partner is working to. And that's one of the main reasons that there's often a lot of rework on application development outsource projects, and that contributes to actual costs exceeding what was planned or expected. And then from the acquirer's perspective, there's often a feeling of a lack of control when application development gets outsourced, and poor visibility as to what's going on and how to control that, especially when things change. So the accelerator is focused on three main capabilities: greater collaboration, lifecycle traceability, and acceptance testing to introduce an early focus on quality. So what we're going to go through are capabilities that help to capture and elaborate ideas and flesh those out into business needs. We're going to look at how we can then collaborate around taking those business needs and developing a firm set of requirements and release plans. We'll look at how we can use workflow to validate and approve and transition the deliverables that get agreed between the supplier and the acquirer. And then we're going to look at ways that the acquirer can get greater visibility of how outsourced projects are being executed. The four main building blocks for the accelerator are outlined here. We've got the business tool over in the top left hand corner, which is used to capture ideas, to do some high level planning and to get greater visibility across the portfolio. That works hand in hand with the requirements elicitation tool, which is used to build up a firm understanding of what the requirements are that are going to be contracted against. And we've got the detailed planning tool, which is used for the release and iteration planning and all of the work item management. And then the quality management component, which is used for acceptance testing. So the demonstration scenario is split into four sections. Firstly, we're going to look at how we can elaborate and prioritize ideas and business needs. So the value that is going to come out here is around reducing the amount of disparate information that we've got spread around in different spreadsheets and documents and locked away in emails. We'll look at how we can establish a central repository for that information that's used in those early planning stages, and then how we can begin to get greater collaboration between the supplier and the acquirer in those early planning stages, and use some of the prioritization capabilities to make good, effective business decisions. Okay, so I'll log into the business tool, and this provides a set of dashboards and views that are tailored to my role within the process. If I was responsible for managing the idea pipeline, I might get a dashboard that has a view of where those ideas are within the process. There's some numbers and some statistics here, and as a business user I can drill down into this information into the underlying ideas themselves. We can see that there's some workflow here that controls how those ideas move through the process, and at these early stages I can begin to make sure that I've got a good business justification as to why this idea would be a good thing to work with, and I can begin to capture some of the criteria that would validate that this idea has been met from a business perspective. So these web forms can be exposed out to different stakeholders, either within the acquirer organization or across the acquirer and the supplier. We can capture a discussion thread around those initial ideas to create an audit trail of the rationale for certain decisions in these early stages, and we can begin to do some initial impact assessment and capture the cost estimates and the potential value, the potential risks involved in this idea. So this section here might be exposed out to the outsource partner to get their early input if it's a particular area that they specialize in, and the tooling can help control and govern how that information then gets pushed out and controlled in a managed way. A little bit further down the line, we might take the idea and derive a set of high-level business needs which elaborate that idea, and we've got some workflow and some control of how those things move through a process. We can see which architectural component they impact, and there's also some visibility here into which particular release those business needs are going to be targeted against. Okay, so we've seen how we can capture ideas and how those ideas can be elaborated into a set of business needs. Now we're going to look briefly at some of the capabilities the tooling provides to support prioritization and decision making. For this example, we're looking at a set of ideas, and we've got a visualization here that is showing a rank ordered list of a set of ideas ranked from the most technically feasible at the top to the least technically feasible at the bottom. Over in the right hand side of the screen, you can see that there are a number of criteria that we as an organization have chosen to govern our decision making. So we might get some subject matter expertise to provide input on the technical feasibility of these ideas. We might get the steering committee to rate and rank the priority of those ideas from their perspective. And what we can see here is that we've got a visual picture of where different priorities lie. So the steering committee, for instance, don't see that this idea is as high a priority as some of the other ideas based on the size of this green segment, whereas the subject matter expert has said that it's pretty technically feasible. We might also get a view of the commercial need for these ideas, and what we're building up here is a value-driven approach to take a set of ideas and get a consolidated view of the value that they would create given a combination of criteria. We can then use the tooling to look at the trade-offs that need to get made against things like the expected cost, the amount of effort, the complexity, the risk. And what we can see on the main chart here is that there's a dividing line coming down, separating out the criteria we want to minimize from the value that we want to maximize. And these charts are built up using a combination of either quantitative or qualitative criteria, and there are various ways to help support the building of those priority lists. But what this provides is a visual way of reaching agreement on where priorities lie based on an aggregation of different criteria. So within the business tool, we might then prioritize a set of ideas, prioritize a set of the business needs that go with that, and then create a high-level release roadmap which we can agree and target the business needs towards. So in this section here, I can see that there's a number of releases for an application called e-billing, and if I drill down into one of those releases, we can see that there's a section looking at the scope of business needs that are going to be targeted to that release. So it's at this stage that we do some high-level planning, looking at the release roadmap. We prioritize the business needs, and then we target those business needs to a particular release. Okay, so that was the first part of the demonstration. For the second part of the demonstration, we're going to be looking at how we can then elaborate those business needs using a set of both textual and graphical techniques to reduce the risk of misunderstandings, and we'll look at some of the way that we can support collaboration and greater governance through some simple requirements review processes. So the starting point here is the business tool. So I'm going to drill down and look at a set of business needs that are targeted to my applications. So In the scope section here, we've got a business need called the mobile interface for bill payment, and we've elaborated that business need in the requirement solicitation tool. So if I hover over that, I can see that I've fleshed the business need down into, in this case, a number of user stories and business process diagrams. So from the business tool, I can drill down into the part of the tooling that is focused on requirement solicitation. So the business need, mobile interface for bill payment, has now been elaborated into a set of different artifacts. Those artifacts could consist of business process diagrams. They could consist of graphical screen mock-ups, so very visual ways of going back to the business stakeholders and getting their feedback on whether our interpretation of their requirements is correct. And if we drill down into one of the user scenarios or user stories, we can see that against those user stories we can begin to map out what the verification criteria are for each of those user stories. We can begin to support greater collaboration between the supplier and the acquirer. So this conversation here that's going on between Marco, who's the application architect on the supplier side, and Bob, who's the application architect on the acquirer side, is reducing some of the misunderstanding that could exist as to what that user story is all about. So we've got traceability from the user story to the test cases, which we'll look at later, and we've also got traceability through into, in this case, a review process. So if we follow that link, what we can see in this part of the tool set is that we can identify a number of different participants for reviews. It could be a combination of people on the acquirer and the supplier side. We can list a number of artifacts that we're working towards, and then we can monitor how those reviews are supported and make sure that all of the workflow and the governance and the comments around those artifacts are captured centrally to create a log of all that change. Okay, so that was the second part of the demonstration. For the third part, we're going to look at how we can take the high-level plans that we've put together in the business tool and then decompose those into lower-level release and iteration plans. Then we'll look at some of the ways that we can use the planning functionality to target, in this case, stories to particular iterations, and then we'll look at how we can then take some of the progress back into the business tool for monitoring and reporting. Okay, so back in the business tool, we've got a representation of the project that is going to be implementing that particular release. And within the business tool, we've got a record of the scope that is being targeted to that release. And we've got a number of work orders which have been issued that go to either one or more suppliers to implement that work. And then finally we've got a set of deliverables which are agreed between the supplier and the acquirer that are going to be developed as part of the ongoing project work. Okay, so within the business tool, we've got a link to the release plan, which is being implemented within the detailed planning tool. And if I hover my mouse over here, I can see that there's a summary of how much work has been done and what we're expected to do and how we're progressing. So if I drill down into the detail, I can see a representation of the business needs on the release plan. And those business needs in this work breakdown structure have been decomposed into a set of user stories. In this example, we're following an agile method. It could be that those user stories are high-level requirements or whatever development artifacts that make sense within your organization. Now, from the work breakdown structure, we can look at how the release has been broken down into a set of sprints, and then how those sprints are targeting subsets of functionality for particular business needs to different sprints. So within the detailed planning tool, we can do some more detailed iteration planning. So we can look at the product backlog, which could be rank ordered, and on that product backlog we can begin to take a particular story. We might plan it for particular sprints within this release. So it's a very easy, intuitive way of being able to take the product backlog and then target that to particular iterations. Back in the business tool, we can use the integration in order to get information from the delivery tooling back into look at the status either for one particular project or for all of the projects that I'm responsible for. Okay, so for the final part of the demonstration, we're going to look at how we can build a greater focus on acceptance planning and involving user input in that in order to focus on greater quality at an early stage. So we're going to drill down from the business tool into the acceptance planning tool, and we'll look at some of the traceability and reporting that we can get to validate that we're working on testing the right things at an early. Okay, so from the business tool I can navigate through to the acceptance test plan. So this takes me through into the part of the tooling that we can use to plan and manage all of the acceptance testing and the more detailed validation and verification testing. So within the acceptance test plan, we've got some traceability to the requirements which are being tested as part of that. So this is a representation of the business needs that have come from the business tool. We've got a link through to the release plan where the detailed iteration planning of those business needs has taken place, and then we've got a view of the test schedules that have been agreed for the acceptance test plan. On those test schedules we might have different test plans, maybe a development test plan which is conducted by the supplier, and then the final acceptance test plan for each of the sprints and releases. And it's here that we can manage all of the detail of the test suites and the test cases. So in this example here we've got a number of test cases, and I can see that there's one test case that has failed when it's been executed. So the traceability enables me to navigate through to the actual test execution result. I can see what was expected, what's actually happened, and I've got the traceability now to create a defect against that. I can navigate from the acceptance test execution result through to that defect, and from that defect I can navigate through to the requirement that it is affecting. So that takes me through to the user story. I can see that that user story is part of a collection of requirements, and if I go to that collection I've then got traceability back into the business need itself and how that's been represented within the business tool. So that collection has then got the traceability back into the business tools. So we've gone all the way from a test execution result through to a defect that got launched against that, through to the user story, through to the collection, then back up into the actual business need. So this is bridging the gap between the business domain and the delivery domain, and making sure that there's good communication and collaboration between the two. Okay, so what I've taken you through is a combination of capabilities focused on collaboration, traceability, and focus on acceptance testing and quality. We've seen how we can encourage greater collaboration between supplier and acquirer as the initial ideas and business needs are prioritized and captured. We've looked at how we can then collaborate during those detailed requirements and release planning phases to reduce the risk of miscommunication. We've looked at some of the artifacts that we've got in place, such as deliverables to monitor execution against contracts, and the whole process involves greater collaboration between the supplier and the acquirer in terms of managing deliverables. And then from the supplier's perspective, getting that real-time view across different applications and different projects has been improved to get greater visibility. Thank you very much.